So I remember this conversation that I had with this very prominent history professor who used to serve as a district attorney, and he was a black history professor, an African American. And, I asked him, what do you think about the way that college students talk about themselves today as members of an oppressed class, as victims, based on their race, their ethnicity, their religion, things like that? And he said, he gave a very startling, very intriguing answer. He said, to me, it looks like they're trying to raise their status because we are soaking it up right now in this kind of victim culture. And people want to play the victim so they can tell their friends that they campaign for social justice before they take their cool banking and consulting job. And those are the words that he said, and I was startled, how mainstream this idea of victim culture has leaked into in society, and especially academic society. The real um, places in the left, um, the real bastions of the academic left, and this whole idea of victim culture has recently gained a lot of new notoriety because Kanye West just tweeted out this tweet: self-victimization is a disease. Like, wow, what? If you were on the right, an intelligent person on the right would totally understand what he's talking about and where he's coming from, but an intelligent person on the left may respond in outrage because they have been swimming in this idea of victim culture for a very long time. Um, this is, in fact, they've been swimming in it so much it's like water to them. It's like that water that George Saunders was talking about in the Kenyan speech, where he talks about these two fish that are swimming with each other, and one fish says to the other, "Oh man, the water's really warm today," and then the other fish looks at him and he's like, "What is water?" And it's like the water. Victim culture is like the water that the academic progressive left swims in. And so I kind of want to clarify, talk a little bit about victim culture, one, and talk a little bit about why it is a disease, talk a little bit about how it got so prevalent, how it became such a status symbol, and then conclude with how we can fight against it. So first of all, what is victim culture? Well, victim culture, put it simply, is the idea that um, people are divided into privileged and oppressed groups. And there are privileged groups, members of privileged groups, including white people, male people. This is very popular on the academic side, but white male people, even white women, some people would put that in there. Some people would put Asian people up there. And then there are people who are oppressed, so are victims of that privilege. Are not exactly victims of that privilege, but victims of the institutional system that put these people on top and put these people on the bottom. So these include people like African Americans, Hispanics, Muslims, members of certain other kinds of races or religions or things like that. Anyone that's not a Christian, those kinds of things. And where it comes from, is from a couple places. One is the work of Michel Foucault, or I don't know how to pronounce it, but he's this French guy who basically said, we need to everything that you say, all the words that you say, all the things that are coming in through your mouth are just products of societal constructs, or just institutional constructs, or political substructures or superstructures. So you say, oh, hard work will get you hard, you should work hard and that'll get you far. Well, that's because you were raised in a political superstructure that he says really just that gave you that mentality as kind of opiate, like a political opiate, to prevent you from seeing your privilege, those kinds of things. So basically, to him, everything is the product of institutional structures and people's choices or autonomy. They don't have any real autonomy in the matter. And so that's the thing that victim culture completely erases: the idea of individual autonomy. The idea that even if you were black, even if you were Hispanic, even if you're facing obstacles, you still by and large, are the product of your choices. And good choices will lead you to be able to advance beyond those places, and bad choices will stick you closer. Maybe if you are black or Hispanic, you face more barriers to entry. Maybe you have to work a little harder. Maybe it's true that you do have to work a little harder. If you're an immigrant, maybe you have to work a little harder. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. I know societies that it is impossible no matter what. Those are places like monarchies. Like, no matter what, unless you're born into it or marry into it, you're never going to be king. You're never going to be queen. That's just the case. But we don't live in that society today. We live in a society where we're blessed by a thing called the American dream. The American dream says, no matter who you are, you always have the autonomy to move beyond your status today. That's something that's being lost in current conversations on the academic left. So why do I consider this a disease? First of all, we have to analyze, what is a disease? A disease is contagious. Okay, not all diseases are contagious, but I'm talking about a contagious disease. Disease is spread from one person to another, and it's really easy to catch on. Victim culture is really easy to catch on. Why? Because it rewards people who don't work. It's very simple. Victim culture rewards people for complaining and for not working. If you play the victim, you can say, give me something because I'm a victim and it is your fault. You need to give me something and I don't need to give anything back to you. I don't need to produce anything for you to give me something. So it's like the easiest thing in the world for people to catch on to and want to catch on to, because it requires absolutely no effort on your part other than the ability to grandstand and to complain about yourself. Also, it rewards selfishness. Okay, now people like to think, oh, capitalism is the selfish thing. But actually, if you think about it, the way that we talk about victimhood and victim culture today is incredibly selfish. When you're talking about victim culture, because by and large, I want to tell you right now, if you live in America right now or a Western developed country and you are in college, you are in the top 2% of the world. The top 2%. Let's talk about privilege now. How do you feel about how privileged you are right now to be in the top 2% of the entire world? So when you're saying, I am a victim, we're really talking about gradations at the top. We're not even talking about the other 98% of people here. If you want to talk about real social justice, and I do want to talk about real social justice, I think it's really important to talk about real social justice. But if you want to talk about those kinds of things, you have to talk about the other 98%, and people don't. People love to talk about themselves. People love to talk about how oppressed they are in college, especially going to an elite $60,000 a year college. Wow, you're really oppressed. You're a real victim. But it's prevalent in academia. It's so prevalent in academia. It's become a status symbol in academia. I'll give you an example. At my college, the university I go to right now, the University of Edinburgh, I was walking along and these teachers were striking for the pension raise. And you would think it would be kind of like teachers versus administration, and students would at best be out of it, but at least some people would definitely support the administration because teachers are not giving them an education, right? They're not getting their education from the teachers. They're not getting the teachers' end of the bargain. But instead, the students are over here. There's this group of students who literally ransacked a building, took over a building, and refused to let it go in solidarity with these striking professors, who they claim are victims of an administration, of a greedy administration that's trying to cling on to all of its money and greediness and filth and things like that. Like, what? Like, they're not giving you the education. So you should be against the teachers at least, but even if you're not against the teachers, I don't really care. You shouldn't be pro-strikers. But why are they pro-strikers? Because it looks like they're campaigning on the side of social justice, that they're campaigning on the side of victimization. You know, the victims, the teachers who portray themselves as victims, they want to portray themselves as victims too, because they want to get in on the action because it looks good for their social status. And this is very prominent on the progressive left. I don't care if you're talking about the University of Edinburgh. I don't care if you're talking about Davidson College. You know, I don't care if, you know, 2 days after the 2016 election, you know, the president of the school holds a giant seminar where, you know, 1,000 people come in, which actually happened, and so everyone can come and cry about how they're facing existential reality, and, like, you know, they're facing existential destruction because, you know, a guy with orange hair got elected. You know, we have a constitution for a reason. He's not the end of the world. But people went up on that stage and they cried and they complained, and it was just a big cry fest, and it was just extremely embarrassing. It showed no strength at all. It was extremely weak. It was just weak. There's no dignity in that. There's no dignity in victim culture, and that's fundamentally why. That's fundamentally why. Really, the last thing that I'm going to talk about is that's fundamentally why Kanye West, you should need to respect an opinion like Kanye West, or an opinion like you know, people who come from the right or the left or anywhere, but anybody who comes and says, you know, I'm a victim, you need to think carefully about what that means. Because if you say I'm a victim, you are renouncing your individual dignity. You're saying I am a product of a system. I have no individual autonomy. I can't change. You are saying, if I'm a victim, then my dignity is tied up with the dignity of my class, which I am beating down for my own personal social status. You're saying very selfishly, give me something when I don't give you anything. If you say I'm a victim and you subscribe to victim culture, what incentive do you have to go out and to really fight for yourself and to really move up in the world? I'm saying this with acknowledgement to the racial reality that some people are better off than other people. With acknowledgement to this. I'm not saying this as being, you know, so-called racially unconscious or like not conscious of the racial reality. I am conscious of the racial reality. I know some people have it out harder than other people. I really do. But the mentality that you have to strike needs to always be one where you believe in yourself and you believe in the individual dignity that you have. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to rise up, and you're never going to be able to get out of that status that you have. Victim culture was something that I rejected very early on in my life. And it's something that I questioned throughout high school. While other people all around me were really starting to get into it, get in vogue, I fell out of it. This is the one thing in my life that, you know, I've been pretty consistent on, even when I was a liberal. Even when I was a liberal, you know, I was pretty consistent on this idea. It's fundamentally because I believe in the American dream, and maybe you don't, but at least don't believe that you have no choices, that you have no autonomy, that you aren't a product of a system. You're a product of yourself. You're a product of the choices that you make, and make those choices. Thank you.